The Trump administration now going after New York Attorney General Letitia James. She sued Trump over real estate fraud, and now the Fed say she may have falsified mortgage documents.
All right, we got two very, very crazy political stories that both involve fraud. First, Attorney General Letitia James is accused of mortgage fraud because she listed her father as her husband on the mortgage application.
James reportedly also listed her father as her husband on mortgage applications.
And to show you how bad it is, here is the mortgage application. We got Tulsi Gabbard, who is being alleged to have voted illegally in Hawaii when she actually lives in Texas.
In the 2024 general election, months before Gabbard cast her ballot in her home state of Hawaii, Gabbard and her husband declared under oath that their residency in Texas, after buying a home in the Lone Star State and claiming a homestead tax break.
And if the voter has more than one home, there is a presumption that the property that gets the tax exemption is the person's residence. Now remember, Gabbard designated her Texas home as a family homestead months before the general election.
All right, so let's go over the fraud allegations for Tulsi Gabbard and Letitia James. These are allegations and not facts, so treat them as such. Now, this is Letitia James. She's the Attorney General of the state of New York. Here is her victory speech after obtaining a judgment against the Trump organization.
Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal. This long-running fraud was intentional, egregious, illegal. We showed the staggering extent of his fraud and exactly how Donald Trump and the other defendants deceived banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions for their own personal gain.
Smack you in the face, because the AG here, it's alleged that she essentially has done the same thing that she was holding Trump accountable for. Mortgage. Letitia James had complained that the Trump organization had lied on mortgage and loan applications to get favorable rates, and those lies caused the state to lose money, and that's how she got her initial judgment. People like Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, he was saying that this is something that people do all the time in New York real estate, and that this was selective prosecution.
You've been doing real estate for decades. Does this case strike you as odd?
Well, let's leave out Trump for a minute, and let's leave out politics and just talk about what happens in real estate development anywhere. So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million, and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset, and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million, and you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you could possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most, because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. But it's humorous in the sense that you have to sue every single real estate developer here in Miami, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Detroit, in Dallas. This is what they do every day. This is what the real estate game is all about. It's getting construction financing against stabilized assets.
So as you hear, businesses generally cut corners to get the best possible loan terms. And this is done every day. And you know who else is doing it? Letitia James. So the U.S. Federal Housing Administration authored this letter, which is a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, alleging that Letitia James has committed essentially mortgage fraud. Now, the first allegation goes back to 1983. Letitia James and her father purchased this home in Brooklyn, New York. Here's a picture of the Attorney General recently walking out of that home. And here is the mortgage application from 1983. And as you can see, it says right here, Robert James and Letitia James, his wife. But when you go down to the next page of the mortgage application, which is Exhibit G, it also says Robert James and Letitia James, his wife. So the Trump team says this is evidence of mortgage fraud. Now, before we get into the rest of the allegations, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Ethos. A couple of years ago, a close friend of mine passed away unexpectedly, and it really got me thinking about protecting my own family's future. That's why I want to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Ethos. They're making getting life insurance quick, easy, and affordable. And really think, what if something happened to you? How would your family take care of its rent or mortgage payments, tuition, or everyday bills? It's difficult keeping up with those things now, but just imagine if you and your income wasn't there. And that's what Ethos can give you. It can give you that peace of mind to know that your family will be taken care of, even if something happened to you. Now with Ethos, you can apply for affordable life insurance quickly and easily online, all without a medical exam. Just answer a few health questions and lock in your rate in as little as 10 minutes at ethos.com/Nate. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and term life policies start as low as $10 a month. Plus, over 3 million families have trusted Ethos Life, which has a 4.8 out of 5 stars rating on Trustpilot with over 2,100 reviews. Now, go get your free quote today at ethos.com/Nate. That's ethos.com/Nate. And remember, life insurance isn't about protecting you. It's about protecting the people you love. Now, let's get back to the allegations. Now, the Trump administration then points to another piece of information that seems to be fraudulent.
It's also raised about James's Brooklyn home. 2001 city records show it was a 5-family dwelling, which experts say would require a commercial property loan with perhaps higher interest rates. But James allegedly listed it as a 4-family unit. A James spokesperson would not say if any units have since been combined, as a property of 4 can be backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, often qualifying for better interest rates and a lower down payment.
But now the Trump administration wasn't finished. They found more allegations of fraud. See, Letitia James is the Attorney General of the state of New York, and to have that job, you must live in the state of New York. Your primary residency must be in the state of New York. But the Trump administration says it has documents to show that Letitia James claimed that her permanent residency was actually in Virginia.
This Norfolk, Virginia home is co-owned by Attorney General Letitia James. That, according to records that appear to show, she may have claimed that house as her principal residence. The Federal Housing Finance Agency director, who previously was a Trump fundraiser, sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department calling for a mortgage fraud investigation into James, alleging she appears to have falsified records to receive favorable loan terms. Sam Antar, an accountant by training and past convicted felon, first raised questions about James's property-related records.
If she did actually use it as a primary residence, she'd be disqualified automatically as the Attorney General. If she didn't actually use it as a primary residence, she would be committing mortgage fraud. So take one or the other.
Late this afternoon, James's office said the co-owner, her niece, used the Virginia home as her primary residence.
So, as you just heard, the question is going to be, did she live in New York or was her primary residence in Virginia? Now, if her primary residence is Virginia and she got the tax exemption, then that means that she couldn't be state AG because you have to live in New York to be state AG. Well, your primary residence has to be in New York if you're state AG. So, do you think Tish James committed mortgage fraud after that big speech about fraud and Trump wanting favorable loan terms? It seems like she was doing the same thing like Kevin O'Leary said. But if you're on the left, this is the nightmare scenario for you. But if you're on the right, this is a great... But now we're going to flip it because Tulsi Gabbard has essentially the same problem. This is Tulsi Gabbard. She is currently the Director of National Intelligence for the United States of America. One of her big issues that she's tackling is voting security.
We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our election.
Now, Tulsi Gabbard is from Hawaii and recently moved to Austin, Texas.
Months before Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as a director of national intelligence in the midst of her transformation from independent to Trump supporter.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
In March 2024, she bought a home in the politically red state of Texas. Soon after, the background on some of her frequent Fox News appearances changed from the slope of Oahu's Diamond Head crater.
You see them out pushing this so-called woke agenda
To a view of the Texas state capitol.
This is personal for me, this endorsement of President Trump.
A CNN investigation found that Gabbard declared herself a Texas resident.
Now, you may say, why is any of this important? Well, if you're a homeowner, you know about the homestead exemption. That means the house that you actually live in, you get a larger tax break on. Now, if this isn't your primary residence, but just some vacation property, then you're going to have to pay more taxes on that property. So in the case of Letitia James, when it came to the Virginia property, she said that that was her permanent residence because that gives you the lower tax rate. See, you're only allowed to vote where you actually live, your primary residence. So the bottom line is, if Tulsi Gabbard is taking the homestead exemption and declaring her primary residence is in Texas, then technically it would be illegal for her to be voting in Hawaii because that wouldn't be her primary residence.
Gabbard rents a home in Hawaii. She's lived in the Aloha State for many years. In March 2024, Gabbard bought a home in a suburb of Austin, Texas. In June 2024, she and her husband declared under oath that we are residents of the state of Texas, and their Texas home was designated as the family homestead. And she also claimed a homestead tax exemption on the house. But in the 2024 general election, Gabbard cast her ballot in Hawaii, and that's potentially a problem. Under Hawaiian election rules, an individual can only have one residence for voting purposes. And if the voter has more than one home, there is a presumption that the property that gets the tax exemption is the person's residence. And remember, Gabbard designated her Texas home as a family homestead months before the general election. What is the problem here?
The problem appears to be that Ms. Gabbard is claiming that she's a resident of Hawaii, that she is eligible to vote on Hawaii races in Hawaii because that's where she lives. And she's also at the same time claiming that she's a resident of Texas.
Now, Tulsi Gabbard denies 1,000% that this is voter fraud, and this is what her attorneys say happened.
Gabbard's office tells CNN that she took the Texas homestead exemption as a first step to hiding her address because of security concerns. In a letter to CNN, her attorney said Director Gabbard was, is, and intends to remain a Hawaii resident. That is where she lives, pays taxes, and, of course, votes. Any suggestion that she is no longer a resident because she took the advice of local officials to register a homestead exemption to protect her and her family's privacy is flat wrong, factually and legally.